It's been Hall of Fame week here on Peacock and Williamson. Now we're diving deep into NFL coaches, current NFL coaches that are Hall of Fame locks, likely Hall of Fame coaches, and maybe some younger coaches that are trending in the direction of what they have to do to get to Canton on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you become one. Subscribe up on the new Peacock and Williamson YouTube. Still trying to grow the new YouTube channel. Hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you know when a new podcast is up and when you know when we go live, which we are trying to do at least once every week on those Thursday mailbags. And you can find us everywhere else that you find your podcasts. All right, Matt, we're going into Hall of Fame coaches today. We've had a lot of fun, and it's created a lot of conversation. Yesterday's mailbag was a lot of folks pushing back or asking questions about the current player Hall of Fame episode from Wednesday that you can find on all of your favorite podcast apps. And what we did is the 33rd team, 33rdteam.com, kind of put out some candidates that they thought were Hall of Fame locks as players and now coaches in a couple of articles. So go check out the article there and their reasoning. And we're using them as a template for if we agree with them and maybe what we think about some of these coaches and if they really are locks or likely to get into the Hall of Fame. And there's one name that stands out in the NFL that has to do no more work, Matt. And I think everyone would agree that Bill Belichick stamped his induction into the Hall of Fame a long time ago.
No question. Real quick, BP was nice about it. I'm not going to be as nice, practice squad. Hit pause on the podcast right now. I know you have the YouTube app on your phone that you're listening to. Just hit it, search for Peacock and Williamson, and hit subscribe right now. I mean, this is non-negotiable. Just do it, all right? Anyway, I'm just being an authority here. How you like that? I'm just being a head coach. I mean, I'm just laying down the law.
Do it. Do it.
I guess the question isn't, is Belichick a Hall of Famer? Of course he is. Is he the greatest of all time? Like, I don't think there's even any question he's on the Mount Rushmore. I mean, especially if you'd go Super Bowl era or later. I mean, like Paul Brown. I mean, with all respect, I mean, he's the first coach that ever watched tape or built a practice schedule. But if we talk like at least in the last 50, 60 years, I think Belichick or Walsh is number one.
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah. And one thing that happens, and too, when you're comparing eras, and that makes it difficult, is because someone will downplay past eras because, oh my gosh, they couldn't even compete in this era. Well, of course not, because they were inventing the things that everybody teaches on day one, right? So
you're of course, standing on their shoulders.
Yeah, how do they know about things that didn't exist yet? That's like that's like getting mad at a caveman because he's not a 5-star chef. It's like, well, he was carving
and using an iPhone,
and chasing around animals all day. Like, how can he possibly be
busy? Right.
But they learn things, they pass on to the next generation, and so wide receivers and route runners, they're learning techniques that guys like Jerry Rice invented, and that Jerry Rice learned from guys before him, and coaches especially, and schemes, right? If you went and, I mean, any quality control coach could probably go out coordinate somebody from, the 1960s and 70s, but they probably wouldn't have the players and talent that would even understand what they're talking about. So maybe it wouldn't work. You know what I mean? So, and this happens in baseball all the time. Babe Ruth couldn't play in Major League Baseball today. Well, he'd strike out 1 billion times. Of course he would. But guess what? He was swinging a 40-ounce log,
right?
And had no nutrition, no training.
Right.
Take the best players from now, put them in his day, and say, here, swing this tree trunk. And let's see if you can out homer entire teams. So look, you got to look at things in their era. And no matter how you look at it, Bill Belichick's Mount Rushmore, all-timer. He's next to Bill Walsh. We'll argue about who the other two guys are, but Walsh and for me,
Belichick,
at least,
I think
Walsh and Belichick in my lifetime got to be on there. So that's easy.
I mean, just to reiterate that, and your caveman example is perfect, or asking a caveman to write code, or like, come on,
Right.
Of course not. I've interviewed a lot of the super Steelers, and I strongly got the impression that all-time great defense had like 2 defensive calls. They played like man or zone. I mean, break the huddle. They didn't even go to nickel very often. Donnie Shell, the strong safety, would come guard a third receiver 3 times a game, and that was like innovative and crazy. Like everyone had the same assignment every time. Like the game has changed dramatically.
Yeah, you go and do a cuddle and say, we're going to do Mabel. We're going to do a buzz here. And be like, what are you talking about, man? How about I just beat the guy in front of me because I'm better than him?
Yeah, that guy can't block me. I'm just going to rush the passer and kill him, right? And then I'm going to hit him in the head, right?
The size of offensive linemen and it's just so different. It's so hard to compare eras, but at the same time, you give a guy who was a 270-pound lineman, you give him all of the nutrition and the weight training and all the knowledge of today's guys. Who's to say they couldn't get up to 300 pounds? They just weren't then, and they didn't need to be.
Well, and some of them sold insurance in the offseason or were teachers or, you know what I mean? Like they had to make some money. And oh, by the way, I mean, this isn't a history lesson, but many of these guys, especially in baseball, didn't play against African Americans or Latinos or you know what I mean?
Guess what? The ball did not jump like it did either. So you get a 160-pound dude with swinging a tree trunk with the dead ball, and guess what? You're not hitting 30 home runs, dude. You're a slap hitter. You're trying to scrap your way onto base like just about everybody else back then was playing.
And the steer at the football, I saw a special with Boomer Esiason 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's probably even longer because he was somewhat recently a quarterback. And they gave him a football from every era, starting with the newest ones that he'd throw 3 or 4 passes. And the old ones, I remember his exact words were like, this is throwing a manhole cover. Like this thing is, it's not even, it doesn't even have a point on it.
That's awesome. I love that. So Bill Belichick, clearly a lock. I love that they mentioned his Browns head coaching career on here as well. But that's not why he's Hall of Famer, but it's on his resume for sure.
Everyone just assumed he sucked as the Browns head coach. He was starting to turn that team around. But by the
coaching staff is insane too.
Is insane. Saban, right.
But that's not why he's a Hall of Famer. It's what he did after that. And Andy Reid is the only other lock here, and I think they got it right with the 2 locks that are on there. I would probably add a lock, but the recent Super Bowl wins for Andy Reid locked him in to that. And he was kind of the coach that couldn't win the big one with the Eagles. Mm-hmm. That has absolutely changed now. And I'm sure Andy Reid very thankful that he ended up with Patrick Mahomes and allowed that to happen for himself. But Andy Reid was always was probably going to be a guy that we're talking about as Hall of Very Good until he got his couple of rings.
Yeah. I thought he was knocking on the door before he ever met Pat Mahomes. Remember, he got an amazing season out of Alex Smith. He took teams with Bobby Hoying and Kevin Cobb and all those Eagles quarterbacks pretty far. Like, I didn't think he was a Hall of Famer before he met Mahomes, but he was knocking on the door in the conversation. Now he just kicked the door in.
Yeah, he's completely kicked the door down. He's definitely a lock. Next, I want to get to the list of likely.
Last thing, I'm sorry, I interrupt you so much, but I think he could end up on the Mount Rushmore.
This is not over, right? Like,
Mahomes,
and people keep talking about Patrick Mahomes. He's the greatest all time. Like, well, his start is amazing. Let's hold on. Let's see how this goes. We've got 10 more years, hopefully, hopefully nothing weird happens of watching this. Andy Reid's got a long time to go. We'll see where this goes because after 12 months from now, we might have to say, man, this is Rushmore type stuff. But
if he wins 2 more Super Bowls or 3 more Super Bowls, it's going to be a pretty. You need a large mountain to carve out Andy Reid, though.
That's true. look, physical health is not the highest attribute of any of these Hall of Fame coaches, right? It's like not part of the resume. There's not a lot of time. Like the modern coaches are doing a pretty good job, and there's like, they have treadmills underneath their desks while they're doing all this work. They're at least like looking a little bit more after their health than some of the past generation. But every generation has a dynasty, and it's looking a lot like it could be that for the Chiefs. Like this could be a lot of rings.
Just handed it from Belichick to Reid, too.
Man,
like there's not even anybody in between.
Next, how about the likely Hall of Famers? Is there maybe some more locks that haven't been mentioned that are current NFL coaches? Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Take your swing at Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 with your first bet and you'll land $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel. Win or lose with that first bet. That's $200. You can spend betting everything from money lines to over-unders. Who do you think is going to hit the first home run? I love the app. It is safe, secure, super easy to use, whether you're using the website interface or the app. You can build your own parlays. It's so easy to navigate through the different sports. Find your bets. Find your specific niche. And I mean, there is a million ways to bet on just about every sport, including 2023 NFL football as well. I know it's not football season, but baseball bets every day, NFL futures, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There is no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Here we go. Continuing on the list from 33rd team, and there was only two locks that they put up there. What about Pete Carroll? Does he deserve to be on the likely Hall of Famer list or the lock Hall of Famer list, man?
Well, we did this the other day with players. I mean, lock in the way that they describe it is we don't even really have to have the conversation. The Tom Brady, the Belichick. Let's just move on. Let's not waste our breath. I don't think Carroll is there, but I think he's absolutely in. And while you were reading that wonderful ad read, I scrolled down the last 5 or all the classes of the Hall of Fame since 2020. And these 4 coaches all went in very, very recently. And I think it, not to ruin the podcast, but I think it lowers the bar dramatically. And with all respect to these 4 coaches, they're tremendous. I mean, great. They'll forget more football than I'll ever know. But Dick Vermeil, Flores, Cowher, Jimmy Johnson. Like, Pete Carroll blows all them away, in my opinion.
Yeah, but especially I'm thinking of Cowher.
I think he's the lowest of all of them, and I'm a Steeler guy,
Yeah, and like, because Pete Carroll's been doing this a long time. He's clearly a great coach. I think the whole Russell Wilson and turning around Geno Smith's career is a huge feather in his cap, even though, they didn't go far in the playoffs. They didn't win another ring, but we'll see. And he's rebuilding he's 70. Is he older than Belichick? They're pretty close, right? They're both in their 70s, I believe, right?
And he's remarkably young looking and active.
Yeah, is how active he is on the field, and he's rebuilding a new football team with the Seahawks. He's not shying away and like, I'm trying to win one and go retire. Like, he's setting up something that's probably going to outlast him with the team that he's putting together with all these young players, all these draft picks that they've had the last couple of years. And so I love seeing that. And Pete Carroll, I think, is probably pretty darn close to a lock if it ended now. And for me, a small hall guy, I would say that if I was a voter. And then when you look at and you throw another ring on that, then it's a done deal, I think, for Pete Carroll. But he's got rings, or he's got a ring at least as a head coach. And when you look at the past guys that have gone in, and then that's kind of why I always talk about small hall. It's like, okay, like we're going to start letting everybody in at some point. If you're just comparing it to who's the worst Hall of Famer, if you just got to pass him up, like the hall is just going to be
watered down. Yeah. And by no means do I think he would water it down. I had to look it up. He turned 72 in September. So early this season, he will turn 72 years old. And I think he's a tier above Vermeil, Flores, Cowher, and even Jimmy Johnson. And I know it doesn't carry any weight, but he was also a stud at USC too.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't count for this. This is a Pro Football Hall of Fame. This isn't the College Football Hall of Fame. Because Jimmy Johnson's got more hardware in a short amount of time, right? Than Pete Carroll.
Yeah, but he was short-lived.
Yeah. But I mean, you're like starting to count. Like, so he's got a ton of wins. Like, he's got plenty of wins. He's had a lot of good teams. He's a great coach. He needs that one more ring, and then there would not even be a discussion.
Yeah, and I don't know who'll ever get it. I mean, he's 72, and Geno Smith's his quarterback. But you kind of mentioned this before. Last year might have been his best coaching work.
Awesome. I mean, just amazing what he's done, for sure. How about John Harbaugh? I think we're starting to get in the category of, I'd probably put a gap between, as good as Harbaugh is, and he's got a ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would put a gap between Carroll and Harbaugh, and maybe that's unfair to Harbaugh just because he's not old enough yet. If he coaches another, how old is Harbaugh? I mean, he looks pretty young probably for his age. It might be surprising how old he is, but if he coaches for another 10 years, I mean, he's easily and things go as well as they've had for his career, he'd be in the Pete Carroll conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, this whole group to me is pretty close to the Carroll conversation, but I think he's the one clearly number one of tier 2 and is maybe in tier 1. Carroll, I'm talking about. These other next couple that we talk about are all really similar. And I'm not giving Harbaugh a hard time at all, but there was a stretch. And actually, I think this is a feather in his cap. This is his 15th year. I just pulled up the all-time winningest coaches, and he is right behind Bill. His next 2 wins, he'll pass Bill Cowher on the all-time list for 24. So he'll get there this year.
So but maybe he is a lock.
He might be. Again, if Cowher's in, and Jimmy Johnson and Flores and Vermeil, this whole tier I think gets in. But we'll talk them through anyway. And a couple of Carroll's got way more wins, and so does Tomlin than Cowher. Real quick on Harbaugh though, and I do think this is a feather in his cap. But during the Lamar rookie year, or going into Lamar's rookie year, his seat was really hot. Like if he doesn't make the switch to Lamar, I think he gets fired and goes down with the ship with Flacco. And it was a big risk. I mean, he just threw away his offensive playbook, handed it to Lamar midseason, and reinvented the Ravens.
That's phenomenal. It's phenomenal stuff. And it's also it goes to show you how quickly you're like, okay, this one season, guess what? Hey, congratulations, man. You just, you're a really good, well thought of head coach around the league. You brought our team a Super Bowl, but we don't like the way things are going right now. You have a year, maybe you're fired or you're on a Hall of Fame track.
Yeah. And I think we should do a hot seat coaches conversation maybe next week, but I don't think Belichick would ever get fired. But what if they went 4-13 this year? He may retire.
Yeah, like forced. You know what I mean? More of a forced retirement than a firing at some point.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way, and we'll get into this later. But if Belichick was forced out, he'll show back up again and coach somebody else
if he wants, of course.
Like
right?
Carroll and they would. Retirement's not even these are lifers, and you almost have to be a lifer if you're an NFL head coach for any length of time. You're a lifer.
Yeah,
you have to be a lifer.
I had to click on it. Harbaugh is 60 years old. He looks awful good for 60.
He does. Yeah, he looks great for 60. I had a feeling when he's coached for 15 years. Like, how young was he when he got that job? John Harbaugh, just keep coaching and he'll cross whatever line, whatever threshold that is. He's already got the ring, and that's, the biggest thing. And he's got competitive teams now. So, like, again, with some of these quarterbacks or some of these head coaches, you get another ring, then you're definitely in, and you go from likely to lock. And so just more time as a head coach is probably what someone like John Harbaugh.
I mean, when this season ends, he might be in the top 20 all-time win leaders ahead of like Joe Gibbs, so he's in.
Now, again, for me personally, I think of John Harbaugh as like, he's a really good head coach, but I'm not for my personal Hall of Fame. What I think what the no conversation, he wouldn't be in yet for me.
I hear you. And again, it gets a little watered down, and those last couple names that went in were a little soft for me. But if they're in, you have to put Harbaugh and Tomlin and Carroll, and right.
I don't want to spend too much time on Sean Payton because we talked a lot about him yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
And Sean Payton versus Mike McCarthy was the conversation, and go back and listen to Thursday's mailbag episode. But Sean Payton's clearly been on that path and well thought of in NFL circles, and this could go a couple of directions for Sean Payton, right? Because if he flames out with the Broncos, it absolutely hurts his candidacy for the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. But if he turns around the Broncos and it was clear that all they needed was a really good head coach and Russell Wilson plays like old Russell Wilson, then you can almost lock him in. So this could go, this is huge for Sean Payton. This could go either direction.
It's actually kind of a risk now I think about it. Like if he never coached again, I just pulled up the win leaders. Payton, Cowher, Harbaugh have all put in 15 years of service. Payton has 152 wins. Cowher's got 149. Harbaugh's got 147. So if he never touched the Broncos, he probably gets in on his own. But you're right. If he falls on his face and wins, single-digit games for 3 years in a row, that's going to hurt him.
A little risky.
Yeah, a little risky. But he's getting a nice paycheck to do it.
It's not risky. I'm sure he's not too worried about it. And I'm sure his confidence is through the roof on turning around Russell Wilson and those Denver Broncos. All right, next, we've got to talk about some coaches that could be on a Hall of Fame path like Matt's Steelers coach, Mike Tomlin, and my 49ers head coach, Kyle Shanahan, on the list next. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As Matt said earlier, you have no choice. We are forcing you to go subscribe to the new Peacock and Williamson YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell, the thumbs up, and all those things, and spread the word about the Locked On Podcast Network because your team is covered no matter what podcast app you enjoy listening to podcasts. Here we go. Mike Tomlin. You have been lockstep with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Matt, since you were very, very young, and you've seen very few head coaches. And the last head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers is in the Hall of Fame. And if I'm not mistaken, it sounded like a little bit earlier in this podcast, you were saying that you think Mike Tomlin's even better.
I do. I mean, again, I've seen three in my lifetime. I would go Noel, Tomlin, Cowher. Easily. And Noel's got 4 rings. I mean, so that's, we're going back a ways. Like Harbaugh, like Payton, like Carroll, he has 1 ring. He's coached 1 year longer than Harbaugh. I mean, everyone knows about that rivalry, but Tomlin showed up a year earlier than Harbaugh did. But he has 16 more wins than Harbaugh, and he's only 51. I mean, he was the youngest coach in the league for a long stretch. People forget that. So, if Coach T wants to go another 10, he probably can.
I mean, if he wants to go to 72, like
right.
Pete Carroll, I mean, 20 more years. And one of the questions I was going to ask you, Matt, does it seem like as long as you're good enough to get enough jobs or stay in one place and coach for 20 years, is that the lock? Just for being a 20-year head coach in the NFL, you're a Hall of Famer.
Maybe. Again, I'm looking at this list, and back in the day, the Landrys and those guys coached 29 years, and Hallis coached 40. But in today's NFL, with all the knowledge of they have more money in their pocket. I think seats get hotter. You don't. Free agency doesn't come steal Staubach, Lilly, and your other Hall of Famers. It's harder to stay on top now than it was. I mean, your Niners didn't lose Rice 1 year and then, Montana the next, or, those type of things. So I think longevity's more impressive now than ever. But really, maybe if you even do 15 years more with one team, it's pretty darn impressive. I mean, that's the Payton, Cowher, Harbaugh, Tomlin neighborhood.
15, 1 ring, you're in.
That's pretty strong. Yeah. I mean, you're then like 150 wins, give or take. That's pretty good. You're knocking on the door of the top 20.
Tomlin being only 51 is in an interesting place because I talked about lifers. You can be a Hall of Fame coach and have a real retirement and live a long life.
Think about that.
Without the demands of being an NFL head coach, which is like, I mean, it is hard to be a family man and go through everything you go through. Being able to walk away in your 50s and retire with a long career, I mean, that would be pretty cool.
That'd
You
be unbelievable.
Like for his health and his well-being to have a proper retirement. Because a lot of times what you see is head coaches retire and die. It's sadly,
Right.
They don't have that juice anymore, and they're so old and have been so bad to their bodies the whole time that
Stress.
So maybe this new, we talk about lifers, maybe this new era of coaches, and Mike Tomlin's probably the first one of those guys. Maybe they have a way out of this profession that it seems like guys bastards haven't had.
And we'll get to them, but maybe McVay, Shanahan, some of these guys that got hired at a very young age can do something similar. Put in 15, 20 years with one team, win a ring or two, win 180 games, go to the Hall of Fame, retire as a 60-year-old or 58-year-old or whatever. Like, again, think about Tomlin. If he puts in 10 more years, he'll probably win 80 more games, and he'll be like fourth all time on the list, and he'll retire as a 61-year-old.
That's wild. And the other thing is some of these guys are getting jobs a lot earlier. You used to not get your first attempt until you're 51, and you just cling on to it as long as you can. So if you're getting that job earlier, burnout probably hits in sooner. McVay was thinking about retirement this offseason.
Yeah. And even like Lombardi gave it up with the Packers at one point after 10 years. Madden with the Raiders gave it up at one point. But I think the Rooneys say, we're going to hire somebody young because you're going to be here for 2 decades. Got it?
Those are the likely Hall of Famers, the lock Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Do you see anybody else that deserves to be up into the likely or lock category that we haven't talked about yet? Because here are the names in the potential Hall of Fame category. There is Mike McCarthy of formerly the Packers, now the Cowboys. Sean McDermott of the Buffalo Bills. Sean McVay, Los Angeles Rams head coach for not very long, but he's got himself a ring. Obviously, one of the better coaches in the league. Doug Peterson of the Eagles and Jaguars has a ring. Ron Rivera of the Panthers and Commanders. And Kyle Shanahan of the San Francisco 49ers. And that Shanahan tree is already he's in his early 40s, and he's already got his own tree in the NFL with so many head coaches around the league. These are guys who are on a path, but it takes a while. It takes rings and it takes time. So being on the path, things can change. If you had to put money on the guys from that list, or add your own that's not on that list, Matt, who's the most likely to be a Hall of Fame coach out of that group?
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity real quick to at least address McCarthy, who we talked about yesterday, because to his credit, I'm sitting here looking at this list. He's coached as many years as Tomlin and only has 8 fewer wins. And he's coached 1 year longer than Peyton, Cowher, and Harbaugh, and has more wins than all 3 of those guys, all of whom we said are basically locks. He still doesn't pass a sniff test to me as a lock, but his resume is better than I thought.
Right. On his paper resume,
we did mention that
a lot better, and that's kind of what the argument had been that we answered on yesterday's mailbag. But when you consider Mike McCarthy, he's already got one. If you take him away from his Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and he wins another one with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys,
now I'm interested. Yeah,
that is for sure. That's a quick lock for the Hall of Fame to me.
I know you're partial, but the names that jump off the page are McVay and Shanahan, because they have good bodies of work. They're young. Shanahan could win a Super Bowl soon. I don't think McVay can win another one soon, but he has a ring as a head guy and Shanny doesn't. So I think their resumes are pretty similar if they both want to stick around for the long haul.
I think one of the big things for me too is how much impact did you have on the game? Do you have a scheme that other people ran around the league? Like when you look at Belichick, right? Like all of his disciples go get head coaching jobs, but then they're never as successful as he was, right? Bill Walsh, the West Coast offense is spread around the league. We're seeing a lot of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay disciples get their own head coaching jobs. So I think that adds a lot of value to me when you're if you were a Hall of Fame voter, and I am not. But these guys have so long to go. I mean, every season it feels like the 49ers start slow and 49ers fans want them fired. Or at least a loud group of them do. And then all of a sudden, oh, guess what? They're in the NFC Championship game again. And Sean McVay almost retired. So it's like, it's tenuous being a coach. Doug Peterson's on this list. He just got fired from his old job after winning a Super Bowl, right? But now he's got himself a young superstar quarterback and might be building another part of his legacy. So I could see any of these guys being Hall of Famers, and probably a ring and time is what it's going to take. So McVay's got his ring, just a little more time. Doug Peterson, he's got a good thing going in Jacksonville right now.
Yeah.
And he's a smart guy, and he picked the right job there. And I think time is all it's going to take probably for Doug Peterson, even though his name didn't even pop in my head. And it feels like he's so far, but he's, and then McDermott, go win a ring, a little more time.
That would be the key.
Yeah.
That would be key. So my last little nuggets here are Shanahan, before he was even a head coach, had a massive influence on the game as the Falcons coordinator. And you mentioned not even tree, but people taking your system and making it their own, and it's sweeping the country and all that. And the one knock I have against McVay and Shanahan compared to the Carroll, Tomlin, Harbaugh crew is they've had bad years. I mean, there's been the year that you picked second overall for Bosa, and the Rams were terrible last year. Like, not a lot of down years for Peyton, Carroll, Tomlin, Harbaugh, where you're picking in the top 5. Like, that just doesn't happen.
They were doing great or bad. Like, Kyle Shanahan just barely got over 500.
Yeah, right.
Took him a while to get over that hump because of some very lean years to start, and then had another bad year with Bosa and Jimmy G both hurt in 2020. How about this to end it? And
I got one other thing too, but go ahead.
Eric Crocker and I, the co-host of Locked On 49ers, we've compared young Shanahan to young Andy Reid, to where he's going to be the guy who can't win it until he wins it. And then that's going to put him in another stratosphere. Like, if you give Kyle Shanahan.
You think that's why they traded for Trey Lance, to try to get his Mahomes? You know what I mean?
For sure. Oh,
exactly.
He saw that. He saw his rivals go get Matthew Stafford. I think if things didn't get weird for Deshaun Watson that January, Deshaun Watson be on the 49ers right now. They were ready to make a huge move, and everything else was unavailable. And so they said, okay, we'll go to the draft. And they didn't even know which guy they were going to take yet. That's how badly they wanted to find that superstar quarterback, because they just lost a big game to Josh Allen, who torched the 49ers. And they're like, oh my God, we got to get one of these quarterbacks. That's what they were trying to do.
I like that analysis, though. I mean, Jimmy's better than Kevin Cobb, but you're winning a lot of games with the Purdy's and those type of dudes. You know what I mean?
Jimmy's like somewhere between Cobb and McNabb, probably.
Yeah. But you're highly successful with a handful of so-so quarterbacks. And McNabb was even a smidge overrated. He had some faults.
Andy Reid did Andy Reid go to 4 straight NFC Championship games with the Eagles and and never got a ring?
And
so there's lost the similarities.
He had the TO year that he lost in the Super Bowl, but they won a lot of games and went far with the Eagles. Like, again, he had a good resume before he ever met Pat Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
So now you mentioned Shanahan, I have to take 2 minutes to say Daddy Shanahan should be in. Mike Shanahan has 2 rings, 170 wins, which is 2 behind Bill Parcells, is more than Tomlin, more than Carroll. He did coach 20 years, not all for the same team. But I think Daddy Shanahan's resume gets stronger every year because all his disciples that took his stuff are making it better and changing the league. None of that happens without Daddy.
And when you call it the Kyle Shanahan tier, is it really the Mike Shanahan or tree? It's the Mike
Big
Shanahan
time.
tree, because that's where Kyle Shanahan got his stuff, and he's still got all the Kubiaks working for him. And in the next generation, so it's like the old Kubiak and the old Shanahan, and now we got the young Shanahan and the young Kubiaks all coaching together. And so there's a lot passed down there. So Kyle Shanahan's tree is really Mike Shanahan's tree, and Mike Shanahan's tree is intertwined with Bill Walsh's tree, as
of course,
trees are. So Shanahan's got 2 rings. Is he the only coach with 2 rings that's not in the Hall of Fame?
I think so. I'm sitting here scanning this real quick. I think Tom Coughlin has 2 rings and is not in. And that's it that I can find on this list.
Interesting.
Tom Coughlin doesn't seem like
legacy for Mike Shanahan with that outside zone run game. And and the coaches that have now coached under him, and McVay, and those were both under Mike Shanahan, and LaFleur. Like those were that 2012 Washington staff's crazy with Kyle and McVay and LaFleur and Mike McDaniel, and like how many head coaches were on that staff? It's nuts.
Yeah, right. I think one of the all-time smartest things that I've heard in football history is Shanahan gets the Broncos job, which they play in high air. It's hard to breathe. So I want a bunch of light offensive linemen are just going to be on the run all the time and wear your ass out. You know, like I already had the outside zone background, but I'm going to take it to a new level because you got to play in Denver 6 times a year against Schlereth and these guys that are like 270 that can run all day, you know?
You got me convinced.
Yeah, he's into me. And I don't know why it's taking so long.
Yeah, and you're right. His legacy gets stronger.
Mm-hmm.
He's almost, we got to get out of here, but now I'm kind of drawing parallels with Mike Shanahan and Sean Payton, because what happened in Washington for Mike Shanahan, and he wasn't that old when he was done coaching, is kind of like what if Sean Payton doesn't win in Denver.
I see what you're saying.
I mean,
sour end of the career, you know,
sour end of the career. It looks great. And then but the end is, you know, whereas someone like Cowher is still winning at the end. And that's what you remember. And that's what the voters remember.
Go out on your terms and, you know, that kind of thing. Right. Interesting. But it shouldn't. I mean, the body of work for Shanahan to me is every bit as good as Cowher's, or, you know.
And getting stronger.
Getting stronger. Yeah.
It's a great point by you. All right. What do you guys think at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL? Did you have one more note, Matt?
Nope.
Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.